What's going on, guys? It is Tyson the Trainer here, back with another podcast episode. For those of you watching at home, I now have decided to use a ring light, so at least I kind of look a little bit more aesthetically pleasing on the camera instead of it just being a shitty old light on the background, right? So look, in today's video, I have asked you guys on Instagram to ask me a few questions in regards to what you want to know, and there are going to be some episodes, some questions that are going to be their own episode, and then some questions I'm going to answer here. Because actually there have been a lot of good questions that have come through, and I think, some will need more in-depth explanation. Like, to be honest, I could probably make a podcast out of each of these, but sometimes you don't need a long-winded answer to the questions that you're asking, and so you just need a quick, hey, here's what the answer is, on to the next one. Whereas certain things like, I've had questions asked about pregnancy, what do you have to think about training-wise, nutrition-wise while you're pregnant, and also breastfeeding. So like, that's its own individual topic because it's going to be quite in-depth. But then, questions here like, the best way to lose fat, or the facts on some people say dairy is like bad for skin. Like, that's quite a quick answer, okay? So, it is going to be a Q&A day. I like my Q&As. I like that you guys are interested in, knowing about certain things, because the fact that you guys also look to me for answers is kind of cool, right? I never thought I'd be someone who is of opinion or in high regard, and the fact that people look up to me is exciting. So, without further ado, let's get into the Q&A. So, first question, when and how to reduce macros for fat loss? As in, you're not seeing results, and when to drop. So, good question. Firstly, if you're not losing weight, or you're not losing measurements, centimeters, body composition, something changing, you are not in a calorie deficit, okay? Now, when it comes to the order of importance, which will be a podcast that comes out before this, calories matter most before anything. So when they say here, like, how to reduce macros, I don't worry about macros changing when I'm not seeing results, because when I change my calories, the macros are going to be a change just because the overall calories have gone down, okay? So when I say this, I mean, like, if you go, oh, I'm not losing any body fat, maybe I need to drop 20 grams of carbohydrates. That's not a thing. Like, dropping 20 grams of carbohydrates is dropping 80 calories, okay? So calories are the most important side of things, if that makes sense. And so, knowing when to make changes to your calories or anything like that, firstly, a lot of people will use an online calculator and follow whatever the calculator says straight away. And sometimes that's not going to lead to weight loss results, simply because when you're not consistently eating your actual maintenance calories, if you're eating higher one day, lower the next day, not intentionally, just like, one day is busy, one day is not busy. One day you're getting heaps of things done, one day you're not. One day you can overeat because you're hungry, the other day you're not eating as much. The body's kind of in this up and down state, and there's it's trying to fight for homeostasis for the most part. Between your lower calorie days and your higher calorie days. And when you're actually consistent first with eating a good amount of maintenance calories, like, you're eating consistently, if your maintenance is 2,300, you're eating 2,300 for at least a week or two, you're giving your body just like stability, okay? Like, what's the word I'm trying to think of? Is it stability? Like, just routine, I guess. You're eating literally the same thing, and it's not giving your body peaks and troughs. It's not stressing the body out that you're having lower calorie days one day and then you're overeating the next day. And so that's what I would say first and foremost, like, establish a baseline maintenance and eat that for a week or two before you go into a deficit, all right? So let's say you have done that and now you're in a deficit. Nothing's changing. It's been a week and nothing's changed. Well, then you don't do anything. You continue for the next week, okay? I always recommend 2 weeks of stagnation before we change anything. Okay, that means 2 weeks of no measurement change. That means 2 weeks of no weight change. That means 2 weeks of no physical body composition changes. So when you look at yourself on the photos, front, side, rear, when you look at yourself on the measurements, waist, thighs, arms, what else do I do? Waist, thighs, arms, glutes, chest. When you look at the weight and the weight hasn't moved. If all of those things have not moved in 2 weeks, then you can make an adjustment, okay? However, in also saying that, when I say you can make an adjustment, have you been consistently doing your steps every day based off what your calories are supposed to be based off your activity level? Have you been training consistently like you're supposed to? Have you actually been eating the correct amount of food? Okay? Because if you've had one day in that last week where you've accidentally overeaten, then do not think that you need to change your macros. If you've had 1 day or 2 days in the last 2 weeks where you've gone, backwards and you've fucked up a little bit and you've, gone over track, then do not change anything, all right? You need 2 weeks of consistency before you make any changes, because 1 day can ruin a week of dieting depending on how much you overeat, but it comes with a lot of things. If that overeating comes with a lot of carbohydrates and a lot of sodium, then it's going to throw off things a little bit, right? So 2 weeks of literally consistency and no changes before you make any adjustment. Now, the thing with this is that we get metabolic adaptation. So as we're going down in weight, we burn less calories overall because we're lighter individuals and we just become more efficient. So we become more efficient in our steps, we become more efficient at training. The body's trying to conserve energy when you're in a calorie deficit, right? So with this, with the body adapting, it also is going to depend on how much weight you're losing at the start. Because you shouldn't be losing half a kilo, and then nothing for 2 weeks. Because your body will not metabolically adapt by 500 calories within a week. It just won't. Okay? So what you'll probably see instead is a slow drop over time. It might start with 500 grams. After a few weeks, it might go to 400 grams. After a week, it might go to 300 grams. And then if it starts to tick slowly, then all right, I am metabolically adapting. And then you start making adjustments, okay? But definitely, I highly doubt that all of a sudden nothing's going to start moving, because it doesn't really happen like that. You will not metabolically adapt that fast. You will metabolically adapt and you will slowly lose less weight over time, but it shouldn't be like I'm not seeing any movement anymore, all right? Again, unless, one other thing to consider if you're a female, where's your period? Has your period just started coming on that second week? Because we have to be away from that too, because on your menstrual cycle, you will most likely hold water. After the menstrual cycle, you will drop water off. So also make sure, the time is going to be, when you're estimating or measuring, make sure it's away from your menstrual cycle too, away from that week of actually bleeding. And then you can also make it more of a realistic judgment about what's going on. But yeah, you shouldn't just metabolically adapt 500 calories like that, okay? If you're losing 200 or 300 grams a week, then yeah, you could probably metabolically adapt a little bit faster. So once you plateau, once nothing has moved for 2 weeks, then you make the adjustment. And all I do from there is I just recalculate based on the new body weight and what the calories should be. So let's say you started at 75, you've gotten down to 70, and now you've metabolically adapted and nothing's moving anymore. All right, so then we readjust, we recalculate based on your new body weight, then we restart the deficit. So you might only need another 200 calories dropped, or maybe another 300 calories dropped, or whatever it's going to be. But then you just reevaluate based on your new standards or your new normal, I guess. And then you assess from there, and then you make the next adjustment. So that's what I would do. Again, remember, consistency comes first. Nothing has to change after 2 weeks. You have to be away from your menstrual cycle. Then you can make adjustments based on your new body weight and going from there. I hope that makes sense. Next question. I've touched on fasted cardio today. I'd love to hear more about how often and why you changed opinions. Okay. So, I used to be, when you guys look back years ago, I was, what I used to preach was fucking stupid, man. I just got let people get in my head who have no idea what they're talking about, but they were good with their words and they sounded scientific, and they just let me, they just took me for a ride, basically. Not intentionally, these are just people who, that's what they're teaching and they don't know any better, or they might, and they're just shit people. And so I used to tell everyone, oh, you should do fasted cardio to, burn body fat. You should fast for 16 hours a day because you're gonna, increase the body fat burn and all this shit. And it was just, just what I heard. It wasn't even research or anything like that. And so, and I am assuming this person wants to know why I've changed opinion on fasted cardio, I guess, what I talked about. But I guess just, in regarding how often I change my opinion changes based on the research, because I'm not dogmatic. A bit of a spaz there, dog. I'm not dogmatic about anything, right? And, from me, where I've come from, where I used to be quite closed-minded, and this is the answer, no matter what, and based on nothing, I let science dictate what the evidence shows and what should be taught. And so, based on what the research is at the current time is what I'll preach. And if research changes, I will change my stance, because that's what science is, right? And I am, evidence-based, or that's what evidence is. I am evidence-based for the most part. And when I say that, what I mean, by evidence-based is if evidence shows me something different, I'll have to rethink what I'm, rethink my hypothesis on what I thought was correct, and maybe make an adjustment. Now, if one study comes out and shows something different, I'm not going to change my mind straight away, because like the thing here is that one study doesn't mean anything. Can the study be replicated multiple times? Does the replicated study equal the same results? Is there any what's the word I'm trying to think of? I was going to say conflict, but it's not conflict. Like conflict of interest also can be there. Are there any variables that we need to account for that we may not be taking into consideration? Okay. And so when things keep showing up again and again and again, that's when we can be like, all right, well, this seems like the answer at the moment. Take losing weight, for example. High carb, low carb doesn't matter, right? We've night and day shown that carbohydrates are not the key to obesity. Carbohydrates are not the factor for not losing weight. Insulin is not the issue for losing weight. We know, like science shows hands down that is not a thing. And so we're pretty fucking certain that we can stand up and say, hey, this is actually what's going on in the body. A calorie deficit matters no matter what. Whether you have high carbs or low carbs, whether you spike your insulin or don't spike your insulin, calorie deficit matters. And that's what we know. So that's what I say there. Now, regarding the fasted cardio, I used to preach fasted cardio for fat burning, and then I said it doesn't matter, right? Because I found out it doesn't actually, right? Like, if you do cardio fasted or you do cardio with carbohydrates or you eat a meal beforehand, it's not going to change anything, okay? However, in saying that, fasted cardio is actually beneficial for the people who are athletes, okay? Now, the reason fasted cardio is beneficial is because it teaches you to use fat as a fuel source. And now when we say fat as a fuel source, or it's not the fat burning zone, it doesn't mean you're going to use more fat. It doesn't mean you're going to burn more body fat. It just means we're using fat as our fuel source, okay? If you burn 1,000 calories from fat as a fuel source, doing low intensity, or you burn 1,000 calories from carbohydrates, doing high intensity stuff, you're still burning 1,000 calories, all right? And that deficit will be made up by losing adipose tissue, and you'll lose body fat. I hope that makes sense. And so, fasted cardio has a good place for athletes, because when they are able to train on a faster stomach, or just fasted in general, and they're able to use fat as a lipid source, they're able to use fat as a fuel source, they can start to push intensities higher and higher. And when you use fat as a fuel source, you reserve your muscle glycogen. And when you reserve muscle glycogen, when you need to push that intensity higher, you can tap into those muscle glycogen reserves, okay? So the reason, doing fasted cardio for athletes is because it helps actually their overall performance. It also helps with mitochondrial density. It helps with different types of adaptations and things like that too that happen in the body. So like for an athlete, it would be beneficial. And if you're someone who likes to do cardio on an empty stomach because you don't like to run on a full stomach, then that's absolutely fine too, okay? But the thing is, it's not going to make any difference body fat composition-wise or body changes at all, okay? Whether you do it fasted or fed, The calorie deficit matters no matter what, okay? But again, if research came out and showed me different, I would change my opinion again. Because they're the scientists, not me, I'm as educated as I can be. I'll have my master's, hopefully, and that'll be it. I'm not a PhD. I'm not a researcher. This is not my job. But my coach, my dietitian, who is actually a researcher, Zoya, I listen to whatever she says. If she says something, and I've said things before, and she's like, oh, well, actually, and then she'll tell me, and I'm like, oh, can you send me studies? And she'll send me a bunch of stuff to read on, because she's an actual researcher. So I listen, right? And so we just listen to people who are higher up than us. And that's why we have articles, and that's why we have peer-reviewed articles, things like that, because sometimes there can be biases. Also with scientists, everyone has their biases, and when you get peer-reviewed things and people look at it, they'll be like, hey, this is actually incorrect, you need to change this, or this method is wrong, or the testing you did isn't actually accurate. There's heaps of things there. So I just listen to people smarter than me, and then I'm like, all right, well, they seem to know. I'll have a little bit of a think about it, a bit of critical thinking, and then go from there and make my decision, But I'm never going to argue against science. If science continuously shows something, I'm not going to argue against it. I'm not going to tell everyone that keto is better for you because I think so, because your opinion doesn't mean fucking anything, right? Facts are what matter most, and that's something we need to think about, okay? Facts don't care about your opinion. If the information says something, then it's true, Gravity. Oh, I don't believe in gravity. That's your opinion that you don't believe in gravity. It doesn't matter if you fucking don't believe in it. Gravity is gravity, You jump, you're going to land on the ground, okay? You pick up a heavy weight, it's going to fucking crush you because of gravity. Just because you don't believe in it doesn't mean it's not real. It just blows me away, you know, like these flat earthers, oh, the earth isn't round. Like, okay, so imaging that we've taken out of space of the earth, or looking at how the earth curvature works, yeah, it blows me away. So there you go, science first, always. What's the next one? How women's cycles can affect weight fluctuations and why. Okay, so women's menstrual cycles, right? Got a whole podcast talking on this, you know, obviously the different stages of their cycle. And when when a female, depends on where she is in her menstrual cycle, you know, there are going to be different hormones doing different things, okay? So we have progesterone, we have estrogen, we have luteinizing hormone, we have follicle stimulating hormones, and, you know, we're going to have things that are going up and down, okay? So as your estrogen comes down, progesterone is going to go up. As your estrogen goes up, your progesterone is going to come down. So it's kind of like, in a way, it's opposite to a degree, okay? So with that, when you are menstruating and you start to retain more water, that is just because obviously of hormones in your body. Like, I can't tell you exactly the in-depth things that are happening, but all we know is because of hormone fluctuations and what's going on, it's going to cause you to hold more water weight. And that's why when you finish your menstrual cycle, you get that whoosh effect, because now progesterone is coming back down, follicle stimulating hormones coming back down, estrogen is coming back up, and it's kind of putting you back into a way of homeostasis. The interesting thing about females is this is why we also can't do a lot of research or tests on females for a lot of things, and that's why they're done on males, because females are so intricate, right? And there's so many variables that go on, especially during their menstrual cycle. Especially that, you know, some females have PCOS, some females could have amenorrhea due to things. Like some female, like, you know, it's very hard to find. No, I don't want to say normal females, because it's not hard to find normal females who menstruate regularly, but it's very hard to do research on females because of these cycles, okay? And it can just throw off data and stuff like that, which is why, you know, a lot of the tests are done on males. But when it comes to like weight fluctuations and stuff, that's why we don't worry about the scale either, because there's too many fucking variables, right? And with your menstrual cycle, you know, when you are on your period and you are holding more water, which actually doesn't happen to everyone either. It just happens to a majority of females that hold more water weight, okay? It doesn't matter what that scale said. Like, this is the thing is, like, my question for you was like, okay, obviously females' cycles affect water weight, you know, for the most part. But why does that matter? It doesn't, okay? Because you should just know every time if you do hold water during your your menstruating phase, you just know you're going to hold water. And so why weigh yourself, or why worry about the weight fluctuation? Because that's not going to matter of that week. It's literally a write-off. I just call it noise, right? When a client weighs in and I notice, I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Why is the weight heavier? Why is the measurements heavier? Hey, are you on your period? Yeah, I am. It's this week. Okay, sweet. Disregard the data from this week, you know? Have you been on track? Yes. Okay, cool. So if you've been on track, we know the week after you're going to get a big whoosh and the weight's going to go down. So I'm not fussed. So it's just noise. So why I can't tell you exactly what the water retention would be from, I'm just going to say it is due to the increase in progesterone, the increase in follicle stimulated hormone, and that has something to do with probably holding more water and you know, the way your kidneys work too, and what's the word I'm trying to think of? I can't remember what the word is, but it manages water in your body, right? And so basically all it is something to do with those feedback loops and just making you hold more water, okay? So again, it's something I can't actually answer. I'll go and do the research and have a look into actually why, but I can't do it off the top of my head. So I just know possibilities, what could be the reason, but at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, right? So these things aren't important. Like, it's good to know, but it's like, is this going to change anything? No. You should just know that you hold more water when you're on your menstrual cycle, so you don't weigh yourself. It's that simple. What's this next question? So I'm going to touch on pregnancy and nutrition in its own podcast. Pre-bed / sleep foods. Okay, so I don't know if there's any pre-bed / sleep foods that I would consider beneficial, like that would actually help you sleep. But what we do know is high carbohydrates help you sleep, right? So making sure you have a high carbohydrate, like, you know, having some extra carbohydrates at night is actually going to help you sleep. Opposed to what people say, which is, oh, if you have carbohydrates at night, you're going to gain fat. No, you're fucking not, right? No, you are absolutely not. You are going to probably get a better sleep, okay? So having carbohydrates at night is a good option. Apart from that, like, again, I don't know much about pre-sleep foods that'll help you sleep better. Everyone's going to be different when it comes to sleep. So, you know, some people need to eat further away from bed to help with their sleep. Some people like to go to bed on a full stomach, okay? And so that's going to be an important thing to know how you actually feel when you go to sleep. If you don't like going to sleep full, you have to eat further away. If you like to go to sleep full, eat a little bit closer. Your body's still going to digest the food at night. It's going to be a little bit slower as you're laying down, because you are laying down. You're also sleeping, your body's slowing down, but the digestion is going to happen. So you're not going to gain fat from eating at night, firstly, or carbohydrates at night, which we should know by now. But, figure out when the time is good for you to be able to eat before bed. That'd probably be the most important thing, so it actually does support your sleep, okay? Having carbohydrates in your meal at bed is going to be great. If you're dieting and, you want to dot all your T's and cross all your I's, maybe have some casein protein before bed. So having some cottage cheese with like dessert or something, or having a mixed, just in general, dinner, having a piece of steak with some veggies and some sweet potato, whatever it's going to be, or some carbohydrate food, so that way you get in a mixed meal, so it's slowly broken down at night. So that's what I would say about pre-bed foods for the most part. Again, I don't think there's a lot of research showing that there are certain foods that are beneficial for sleep, and I can't really see how they would be. Tryptophan from turkey apparently is going to help you sleep, which could be beneficial. And then also, maybe some supplements. So taking some magnesium before bed is always helping. It was always helpful. Or like ZMA, so zinc magnesium is also a good idea, because they actually do help people with sleep. So maybe trying a supplement like that could be helpful before bed. The fucking, what's the one? Adrenal something? Is it adrenal? The one from ATP, or is it ATP? I think so. Whatever like sleep things are, it's very, very limited research about like sleep and all these supplements and stuff like that. Like, for the most part, we do know magnesium does help, and we do know zinc can be beneficial. But apart from that, like, not much else. So, there's my answer. Last one for today, because I've got to make it quick. I've got to get out of here. Steroid gain versus natty gains. Steroid gains, you're going to make way more results, Like, take me, okay? I'm not even technically on steroids. I'm on 1 ml of testosterone a week from my doctor, right? I've gained 27 kilos. 27? Yeah, 27 kilos, 67 to 94. Majority muscle mass, right? Just on 1 ml a week of testosterone. Just to give you guys context, usually people will start at least 2 mils a week, and they go as high as, okay, so 2 mils of, so when I say 1 mil, that's 250 milligrams of testosterone, okay? So when I say 2 mils, people usually run 500 milligrams of testosterone. And they'll run between 500 milligrams of something all the way up to 1 gram or even more, which is a lot. Even though 1 gram doesn't sound like a lot, 1 gram is a lot in the body. If you look at what 1 mil of testosterone is, like 1 mil, okay, that I put in my body once a week, and has helped me gain this much, obviously with food and stuff and training too, like steroids, night and day, hands down, work and will get you bigger, okay? Studies have been done. You give people steroids, they sit on the couch, they will gain muscle. We've seen it, okay? So night and day difference. However, in saying that, does that mean if you don't take steroids, you're not going to get results? No, right? You can still look fantastic without steroids. That's going to be due to your training, how good you are with your nutrition, and your genetics, for the most part, okay? Steroids basically just up that. They just, exceed your genetic potential, exceed what you could do naturally, because you're able to lift heavier, you're able to push harder, you're able to recover faster, you have muscle protein synthesis activated a lot longer, you have a lot more benefits that are going on with testosterone, and that's why people take it, okay? So, yeah, the gain difference, you have the capacity to gain an exorbitant amount more of muscle, all right? And even though I said you can sit on the couch and take them, you can't just sit on the couch and take them, okay? Like, you can, and you'll get, you'll see muscle mass, but like, if you train, you'll get results. If you continuously sit on the couch, it's not good for you. Because there are, we know there are negatives to steroids, but also, like, steroids promote growth, okay? Activate IGF-1, activate mTOR, activate fucking, muscle protein synthesis, and if you're activating growth, and you're not training, you're not giving your body growth for muscle, guess what else is growth? Cancer, tumors, bad things too. So, we've got the trade-off there. And that's why if someone's taking steroids, make sure they're training, make sure they're consistently training, make sure you're good with your food, so it's actually, giving you benefits. And people say, oh, your diet needs to be on point, and your training needs to be on point. Yes, it does, right? If you want to get the best results, have that stuff on point. But in saying that, you can have a shitty diet, run steroids, and get results. Would I recommend it? Absolutely not. But it's true. Because steroids, so you always have muscle protein synthesis activated for the most part, which means every time you have protein, every time you have a meal, it is being pushed towards muscle growth for the most part, right? Regardless. So you could eat a shitty meal, but if there's protein in that meal, protein is going to be prioritized towards muscle mass for the most part, okay? You're going to have more nutrient partitioning too, which means you probably won't gain as much body fat. You can still definitely gain body fat, but you probably won't gain as much. But again, like, you know, if you want to do the best, then you want to make sure you are eating well. You want to make sure you're avoiding drinking and alcohol. You want to make sure you train consistently, because even though it's like, oh, you know, you can still get results without doing that, like, it's detrimental to your health if you're eating like shit and you're taking steroids, okay? If you're drinking every weekend, it's liver toxic for you, and steroids are also getting filtered through your liver, okay? When you take oral steroids, it's very bad for your liver. When you inject steroids, it's still gonna be running through your liver because it goes through your bloodstream, okay? So your liver has to metabolize that all the time. And when people are eating shit, or people are drinking, doing drugs, all those things, you're putting your liver in overload. And so that's also a risk that people have to be aware of. And that's why, like, you know, educate yourself if you are gonna take steroids. Do the right things before you take steroids. Don't be like, oh, I want to get bigger, I'm taking fucking steroids. Have you reached your genetic potential? So have you trained consistently for 2 to 3 years? Probably 2 to 5 years, to be honestly, at least. Are you eating well? Are you, you know, consistently showing up to the gym? Are you sleeping right? You know, do those important things before you be like, oh, I'm getting on steroids. Because max out your genetic potential, because then once you hit your genetic potential, which means you know, you get as much as you can out of natural, then you have even more room to grow, okay? If you're like, oh, I started the gym a year ago, I'm on steroids now, you're like, you have to take more steroids to get the most out of it now, because you basically got gains that you could have got naturally, which is wasted, and now you're only building on that slowly. When if you exceeded your, where you max out your gains naturally, then you have all this extra room to gain non-natty, if that makes sense, all right? So all I would say for you guys is, again, like, do the best you can naturally before you take steroids. Educate yourself about steroids, because the people that take steroids blow me away. And ask yourself, why are you taking steroids, you know? Like for me, I'm taking steroids because, well, yeah, actually, yes, it is a steroid. I am taking steroids because it is prescribed me for a doctor because I crushed my balls when I was younger. Like, that is what it is, you know? And for me, I'm like, if I look like this on doctors prescribed steroids, how good would I look if I started taking extra steroids? And it's always that, like, oh, I want to do it, but it's hard because, like, I don't want to fall down that pit, because I only want to do it so I can get more jacked, so I can get, you know, bigger. And I'm like, but for what reason? And that's why I keep stopping myself, because there's no actual reason I want to do it, as opposed to getting bigger and getting jacked. That's not a good reason to kind of fuck around with my health, if that makes sense. So I stay here. But if you're like getting jacked and getting big is the reason, then okay, but it's not that fulfilling. Like, you really have to know the why behind why you want to do something, and don't just do it because you're chasing gains. Because again, there are long-term consequences to steroids. We know it, especially steroid abuse, right? And you got to think, do you still want to have kids? Because that can affect your sperm production. You know, do you want to have normal mood? Because you're going to go up and down if you're going on and off steroids. Like, there's so many things to consider. And so you really have to make an educated decision before you go down that route, all right? So that is the video for today, guys. It was quite quick. I will be making more videos. It's just that I had to run to the physio because I didn't realize what the time was. Hope you guys liked it. If you guys did, please like and share. And until next time, friends, I will speak to you then.